everybody. Welcome to Flat Rate World Live. I'm one of your hosts, Wes McDonald, and you'll notice that I am all by myself today because Kenneth Edmonds, my partner in crime, is actually on a cruise. So he's somewhere. I'm not sure if it's the Caribbean or some other lovely place, but he can't be with us today. And I objected to him not being here, but he didn't listen. And speaking of objections, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what I've done is I've compiled the 10 fingers, most common objections that you're probably going to run into in your sales process when it comes to a flat rate model for managed print. And that's okay. I mean, any sales process that we're in, if it's traditional cost per page, if we're selling time and materials and supplies, or some other method, then there's going to be objections. And we don't want to hide from those. We want to attack those head on. And that's one of the things that Ken and I do in our training is make sure we're working with the sales reps that we get kind of ahead of the curve, put those objections out there. And more importantly, make sure that you have answers and conversations that you can have with the customer to get through them. Looks like I've got one comment here already. Who do we have in there? So he can't be here, but he also can't resist letting us know where he is. So good morning from the middle of the ocean heading towards Cozumel. Oh, that's great. So Mexico, enjoy yourself, Ken. And thank you very much for tuning in. You absolutely crack me up. Even on a cruise, you can't resist coming in. And if you're watching it right now, I miss you, buddy. Try and do this justice today without you. And yeah, speaking of comments and questions, make sure that if you have any to leave them. And one of the things that I'd love to hear today is if you do put in your comments about some objections that you might have. These could be sales-related objections to flat rate. They could be general objections to the model in general. Again, we should never be afraid of sharing some of the things that are keeping us up at night when it comes to these new models. So please make sure in the comment section, if you're watching us either on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube Live, that you can leave those comments. All I can say is in the Facebook section, we may not see who you are because the Facebook group sometimes doesn't allow that. There's a way around it, and I'm not sure what it is, but just let us know, who you are, and we'll take care of your comments and questions. All right, let's dive right in. One of the things that you might hear from a customer is that it's too new. I haven't seen this before. I'm afraid of this model. I'm not the kind of person that likes to get away from the things that I'm used to. And although I'm not necessarily satisfied with my cost per page program, this flat rate thing just seems far too new. The model seems scary. Convince me otherwise. Now, one of the things that you have to understand is that flat rate is not new. Flat rate for managed print is fairly new, but the model, a subscription model for acquiring services that traditionally people would either acquire. Software is a great example. There was a time when people would buy their software and then they would either buy it outright or have it financed with something else that they're doing and then pay a maintenance fee every year, usually about 20% to pay for those services. Well, that has changed, and it changed a long time ago. So if anyone out there is familiar with software as a service, that is a monthly subscription for the software that you're using, and it's affected all industries. So I do a lot of work with an amazingly cool company called Tiger Paw Software. They shifted to this model, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago now. Everything feels like 5 years to me, but I think 6 or 7 years ago. And that's for business management software. My brother, who's a video editor, is under a subscription model, a flat rate subscription model, for his video editing software and other tool sets that he uses. And those are both things in the past that people would have paid for, right up front with some kind of maintenance agreement. And so you can let the customer know some examples of these things in their lives. There's personal ones too, right? Netflix is another great example. There was a time when you might have consumed your content, either music or movies, etc., on hard media like a DVD or a Blu-ray or an HD DVD, etc. And of course, that's not the case anymore. I don't even buy CDs anymore. Is that even a thing? Am I dating myself? All of my music I get through a subscription music service. Sometimes I listen to it a lot. Sometimes I listen to it very little, but the one thing that I get every month is a predictable, fixed, budgetable bill. So that's the first thing that you want to do, is make sure that when you're talking to them about the flat rate model, that you give them some comfort that this is nothing new. It just happens to be new for us. The reason that's important is because you can then tell your customer, look, we're adapting this model. We're not creating this model. This model is not something that we've invented. It's something that we're adapting to be able to help you with your managed print program. And it looks like, oh, there's Ken giving us some examples. So although I said I was going to be alone on the show today, it looks like Ken has dialed in pretty hard. Cell phone plans are another, great example, right? That there was a time, and I can still remember it very well, because I have 2 kids that are now young adults. And there was a time, if anyone remembers, paying for text. Do you remember that? Some of those outrageous bills that you would get because your kids were texting too much, or even for phone calls. So my cell phone plan on, my phone here allows me, yes, built on hope. You can see a little geek there for my Star Wars. My cell phone allows me to call the US and Canada with no additional charges whatsoever. I have an unlimited data plan, so it doesn't matter if I have Wi-Fi access. Remember those days, going to hotels and I remember having to pay for these packages for traveling, and I know some providers still do this, but thank goodness mine doesn't, to be able to get minutes and to be able to get usage. Well, those days are gone. And one of the parallels I would say, Ken, and I want to thank you for sharing that, is that like cell phones, which by the way has a consumable, you can't see it, right? But bandwidth and usage is a consumable, okay? So it is a digital consumable. What the cell phone companies have done is they haven't gone crazy. What they've done is they've run the math. They have enough usage, they have enough numbers on what they've been providing for people, how much they use, etc. They've got their bell curve to find out where most people fit. And yes, they're going to have some outliers on the heavy usage side, and yes, they're going to have some on the low usage side. But the important part is that they have the numbers. Well, guess what we have in the managed print world today as well? We have the numbers. And hey, Ken, good to see you again, my friend. And yes, sell brutal. Yeah. It's funny. Some of the plans people would still say are brutal, but they're certainly a lot better than, ever they used to be. And now I'm really going to age myself, but my first cell phone was a Motorola brick. I can't remember the model name of it, but you remember the actual big phone that was mostly battery and looked like you would be traveling to the moon with it. So a lot has changed. And similarly, in the managed print world, a lot is changing. So make sure that when you talk to your customers, hopefully we've put that one to bed. It's not new. It's being adapted because it is the most popular billing model on the planet today for everything else except for print. So we're just making sure that that's accessible to customers, that they can acquire their print in the same way that you acquire managed IT or other services, your software, et cetera, right? All right. I did say that we had the data, and the cell phone companies have the data. Netflix obviously had the data. They continue to collect data. Well, in the managed print world, we have data too. And the most important data, whenever we're trying to offer a flat rate program, is the customer's particular data, because at this point in time, they are all very different in how they produce documents, how they use them in their workflows, etc. And another common objection you're going to get, because you're going to say, look, we need to run an assessment to find out what your usage is, how much color you're printing, is that an email or web documents, is it PDFs, how many documents are going directly to the dustbin, how many multiple versions are you printing that you don't need to be printing? And customer says, whoa, hold on. I've had one of these assessments before. I remember painfully, and so does my IT department, when somebody came here, and actually we had 3 people come here because it was for an RFP, and each of them had to do their own assessment. So we had to take time, make sure that our IT people book time to walk around the office with these people, map assets, be able to pull sheets off it was very disruptive. And at the end of the so those disruptive, we feel we get a lot of. So it's not the same. When we're doing a flat rate assessment, if you look at some of the partners in the world today, Cartos is a great example, that their assessment tools allow you to input from providers of user-based software like Ringdale, like iSoft, and others, without you ever physically having to go to the customer location, because this kind of assessment flat rate is based on usage patterns, not based on trying to figure out what devices, etc. That can happen, but that will happen after the contract and how we're going to lay these things out in the environment. Initially, what we want to do is get that usage, and it is not disruptive. Pretty exciting stuff. I'm not about other providers. If someone can leave comments for me, I'd be excited to know about some of the new innovations that are coming. As the president of Managers Association, I do rub shoulders with quite a few folks, and I've been really paying attention at a customer location to help them understand why it's a good idea to have in the first place. So no, it's not disruptive. Make sure you explain to them very clearly that it's not, your father's managed print assessment. This is new. This is done virtually, and it's not going to be disruptive, and it could make a huge difference in the amount of spend that you have with managed print going into the future. So it'll be worth it. Here's one. This is probably my favorite. Where's the catch? So in the early days of flat rates, and there's still very few OEMs that are doing it, but I've heard people say this about OEMs that I won't name, who probably have perfectly fine programs. I haven't looked at their contracts, but saying that the devil's in the detail, that it's crazy that it's not really flat rate when you look at the contract. The customer's actually getting taken to the bank. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't looked at those contracts. But what I can tell you is that with the flat rate programs that Ken and I work with dealers on, that there is no catch. Yes, there are conditions, and they're very clearly laid out in the contract. So one of the things that we do with flat rate is to make sure that they get a fixed, budgetable amount for their print every single month. And that customer is going to be guaranteed that fixed, flat, budgetable amount for 12 months, for the first 12 months of the contract. At that point, at the very latest, the dealer and the customer have an opportunity to make sure that those benchmark volumes that are being used, that the customer is within the range that they want to be for the program. If that doesn't happen, then there are two conditions that can happen. One, and this is one that I really like and customers really like because it's still something for them to look at in their second year to have that budgetability, is if there was enough excess usage, shame on us for letting that happen. But if there was, that amount can be folded into the second year term of the contract and change the flat rate price for that second year of the contract. So again, there's no catch. They will have a fixed, budgetable, predictable amount, which is the promise, every month for each year of the contract. Maybe in year 3 that goes down. So when they look at year 3 of the contract, instead of going up because their usage went up, that you've helped them with more digital workflows, and that rate's going to go down. Again, for that third year, a fully budgetable fixed amount for their service. So remember that, folks. It's not a catch. Of course, there's conditions. There has to be conditions for anything. Believe me, in your cell phone contract, you have conditions as well. And I love it. The first time I was introduced to it in Australia, I was speaking actually on flat rate billing. This was a few years ago now. Someone brought up this thing called fair play clauses. And what the cell phone companies do, the communications providers, is that there is language around your unlimited usage. There's a couple ways they usually deal with that. One is they say you have unlimited usage. However, if we discover that you're using your device as a hotspot in an internet cafe for people to connect to, well, that's not really fair play. That's not why we're giving you unlimited data, so that you can use it that way. And if you do use it that way, then there are going to be certain things that happen, like us taking that away from you. The second one that I've seen is throttling. So you'll be given unlimited data. You can use as much as you want. But once you hit an excess point of whatever you're contracted for, then they'll throttle that data so that you have less for, surfing it for full quality or whatever, right? And those aren't gotchas. they are conditions. And the same in the managed print world, we can't be afraid to talk to customers about the reality of the fact that we're going to do our level best to make sure that the flat rate price they get is the right one. And that really is the important part, is to make sure that you're giving customers the right price. So no catch, just conditions gels. And actually, I'm not finished with this point yet, because then people say, well, it's not a flat rate if the price isn't the same for the duration of the contract. And I would argue that it is, because what people are looking for is that budgetability every single month. And every business that I know makes adjustments for different areas of their business practices every single year. They don't wait 4 years or 5 years to make those adjustments at the longly basis, right? And nothing stops you and your flat rate program from doing the same thing. And I would say that you should be sitting down with the customer once a quarter. If their print is somehow getting out of hand, it's not where it should be. They brought in some new applications, or they've got new regulations that require them to print more, that you should understand that early. And having those quarterly business reviews or periodic business reviews with the customer to uncover those things. If there is a need to change that flat rate seat during the first year because the customer agrees that they want to, then you're still delivering on that promise. So make sure that you're doing those periodic business reviews, those quarterly business reviews. You should never, ever have to be shot down on where's the catch. Here's a good one. I only want to pay for what I use. So every page that comes out, I've got a cost per page program, and that's how I want to pay for, print forever. And the answer could very simply be, continue to pay that way. Our company has a fantastic cost per page program. And that's one of the things that we train sales reps in our program, is that flat rate is an opportunity, but you have other things to satisfy the customer with. And I know that with all the remote workforces, the people are coming up with very creative ways to be able to deliver print in different ways to their customers. And flat rate is just another arrow in your quiver. So if they enjoy paying cost per page and they don't think they're paying too much, then let them continue to do that. Make sure that you talk to them about whatever your cost per page offering is. Now, if you really want to sell them flat rate, and they're saying that they only want to pay for what they use because, let's say, for example, that counting gives them the ability to do that, well, so does buying a toner cartridge, right? So if you really only want to pay for what you use, you don't want to pay minimums or anything else, just buy toner cartridges, right? What's not happening in this, and I would still suggest this to the customer, as a, in your sales process, believe me, we're happy for you to pay cost per page, because the more color you print, the more money we're going to make as your provider. The more pages you produce, the more we're going to make as your provider. Forget the fact that some of those pages may not need to be in color, such as email and web printing, which is one of the big things that we work into our flat rate program to get rid of those costs from broken workflows. But if you don't care about that, it's okay. We're quite happy to keep taking your money in a cost per page program. We've got one of the best in the industry. But make sure you still talk through the benefits of flat rate with them. So present the idea that you can still offer them cost per page, but you'd like the opportunity at least to work through with them, to talk with them about your flat rate offering. If at the end of that, the customer still says, I just want to pay for what I use, then continue to sell what the people are buying. If that's what that customer wants, satisfy them with your incredibly awesome cost per page program that you already have today. Ken and I have never, ever said in any of our trainings or our live streams or the 10-day challenge that flat rate is the only thing you should be selling. That would be absolutely ridiculous. So if a customer does want to pay that way, then by all means, let them pay that way. The next one. I've got minimums already, and you keep talking about this benchmark volume, and it sounds to me a lot like, minimums, right? So what's the difference? Well, there's a big difference. Minimums are what you have to pay before you start paying for overages. And there are no cost per page overages under a flat rate program. So that's number one. Those benchmarks are used to make sure that we get to the right price for that flat rate price that you're going to be paying. And as we talked about earlier, just like with the cell phone companies and other people, that there are conditions to make sure that we're protected, to make sure that if there is excess printing, if for some reason you hire new people or other things that we're taking care of, but there are no cost per page overages. So as we talked about earlier with the 13th invoice or folding the amount into a new second year price for that flat rate program, yes, there are options for that. But for those first 12 months, you're never going to have an overage. You're not going to have an additional bill. The price that we tell you it's going to be is what you're going to pay. So it is not like minimums. And that's actually why we use a different term for it. There's probably a few out there, but I think my favorite is benchmark. And we say that because, print behavior is going to change a little bit, throughout the year, especially with different verticals. But those benchmarks allow us to know where we should be. Also, into the contracts that we work with dealers on, we make sure that you put in a buffer. So to say that the benchmark plus or minus 10% or whatever percentage you decide to use will have no impact at the end of the first year of the contract. So if by the end of the first year of the contract, you find out that they were actually printing 9% more than they were printing under the benchmark, but your contract allows for that 10% buffer, then guess what? Your customer gets the same price the next year. And that's really cool, to be able to say to a customer at the end of the year when you're doing that review, you were actually up by 9% under a cost per page program. You would have paid this much extra, but because of the way that we have the benchmark structure in the contract, it doesn't cost you anything. Let's get ready for the second year of your contract. All right, here's one. I don't want to use rules. They're too disruptive. And, probably good time for a little history lesson on rules-based software. I've worked for companies that have provided rules-based software. One of them you're obviously pretty familiar with. I'm sure it wasn't that long ago. And they had a great tool set. Nothing wrong with their rules-based application at all. However, installation and implementation was always heavy lifting. And that's not unique to their platform. That is that is really the same across a lot of older versions of rules-based applications. So, but that's a history lesson. That's not how it is anymore. So if the customer says that they don't want the rules, it's too disruptive, ask them why. So first of all, why, don't you want rules in place? They may say, we've tried secure release printing and people had a really hard time with it at the device. So there's a solution for that. Figure out what it is. Find out why they were having a hard time. Maybe they want to print their emails in color because they're fans of blue hyperlinks. I don't know. Whatever it is, dig a little deeper and find out why those rules were too disruptive. That's your opportunity to really dig in and sell on that. And actually, what I'm going to talk about now, I can't share it, but I will say sometimes math helps. So when they say that why, I don't want to use rules, they're too disruptive. Ken and I, when we're training our dealers that are offering the flat rate program, we always recommend giving 3 prices. The first price will satisfy that objection, saying, we'll give you flat rate without any rules in place whatsoever. No problem at all. It's just you're going to pay a premium for that. You're going to pay the most for a scenario where there are no rules. You just want to print the way you want to print. You don't want to have any changes in the environment. No problem. That's price number 1. Price number 2 is we can put some rules in place that are going to have very little impact. And actually, your users aren't even going to know what's happening. It's going to have very little impact on how your users print. What is going to happen, however, is that blue hyperlink in the email is going to disappear. It's going to be black and white. And when they print to the web, if it's for a recipe or directions to a customer location or whatever you would print stuff from the web for anymore today, I'm not sure, that's going to be black and white. That's number 1. And we're also going to increase your duplex because most of the documents that you're producing today are one-sided only because that's how you've defaulted. So we're going to increase that duplex level. People are not going to notice that, right? And so that's not very disruptive. That's price number 2. Price number 3, this is going to get a little disruptive, and it's actually going to get a lot more secure. So we're going to do a secure release implementation on the devices. That's going to have a big impact. That is actually going to produce 20% less volume out of the gate. And these are numbers I've seen from every assessment that I've ever done. Minimum 20% of that volume is going to disappear because your waste print that goes right into recycling, those redundant versions of documents that people are printing, those are going to disappear. They're never going to be printed again. It has a huge impact on cost. So yes, disruptive. People have to go to the device to authenticate, either with an HID card or biometric or some other authentication, even if it's PIN code entry. but it's going to save you a ton of money. So is that disruption worth the 20%? The answer may be no, but at least you've tabled it for them. The second part, obviously, is once you start doing secure release, that you have heightened document security for them in that office as well. That every job that's being done at that device is now being accounted for, that the security of the safety of that document has increased dramatically. So there are some benefits for that. And there's no right or wrong answer on either in any one of those pricing scenarios. But the math really helps. And so I'm going to walk through the math a little bit right now. All right. You can't see my screen, but if you do want a copy of the calculator, you can actually, we'll talk about this later, but through the Managed Print Services Association, you can get a free access to the 10-day challenge, which this can be a part of. But the savings scenarios, for doing nothing at all, they get 0% savings in the example that I'm looking at right now. And the annual spend for this particular example is about $2,000, a month. If they put in the rules that we talked about, the second set, so just making sure that email and web print is done instead of being colors and black and white, and increasing some duplex, that leads to savings of 11.6%. So instead of paying $2,069, they'll be paying $1,800. The third scenario, get ready for this one. The third scenario, the customer is going to spend $1,600. That is a savings of 31.67%. That includes both the savings on the production of those documents as well as the physical paper media that they're using to produce those documents. Think about that for a second. So when you talk about that disruption, it's 31 to 32% of your spend still using the great supplies that you're used to, still using the kinds of things that you trust in your managed print environment. Is that worth it just on those workflow savings? Well, the answer could be yes. The answer could be no. And none of those are wrong answers. But by structuring your quote and letting the customer know that you're going to give them a quote on 3 levels, no rules, simple rules, and more complex rules, that they have those 3 options, you can let the customer decide. Our job in the sales process is to make sure that we get past that objection of the rules. They don't like rules at all, you don't have to pay for them. You don't have to use them. You like rules because you want 11% savings? Here's what you're going to do. You like 30% savings? Well, here's what you're going to do in that scenario, right? So just make sure that they have options. All right. Here's one that could happen in your sales process as well. Okay, I like this idea of rules, but let's just say, for example, that I take the third option for the 31% savings. Am I stuck on that? Like, do I have to do that? Are my people going to, if they don't like it, if we can't get them accustomed to changing their workflows because we're more of an old-fashioned company, or are we stuck with that for the term of the contract? The answer is no. Absolutely not. Because we are driving the savings from rules, this is one of the things that I love about rules. Because we are driving it from workflow inefficiencies, if, say, for example, they found that some of those rule sets were too disruptive at the end of the first year of the contract, we can soften those rules to the middle level and just have them pay more per seat. Because remember, at the beginning of the cycle, we already gave them a quote on the 3 levels. They already know what their spend is going to be if they decide to change their mind. So this is actually a really good question. No, you're not stuck. You will pay more, as we talked about in the original quote, right? But no, we're flexible. So if it's not working, then let's work together. Because the way that the quote is structured, it's based on inefficiencies. It doesn't actually cost the company any money at all. So remember that to make sure that the customer knows that, yes, of course, you're flexible if you decide to change your mind. It may go the other way. A customer may be paying for no rules at all and then decides in the first year, after the first year, it's like, you know what? I think you're right. I think we are paying too much for color production on email and web printing. Can we put those rule sets in place? And the answer, absolutely. What's amazing for the dealership about the way the flat rate model works is that, yes, the customer saves money, but it's not 100% of that money because the dealership is taking some of those savings to be able to deliver those savings. So both the customer and the dealer benefit when those rule sets change. So it's the first time I can remember in my entire managed print career where there's been that perfect alignment between why the customer wants to save more and why the dealer wants to help them to save more, right? Everybody wins. So If you don't understand what I'm talking about there, we talk about that in great depth in the 10-day challenge. But certainly you can DM me and reach out, and I'll talk about the model, how a dealer actually makes more money under flat rate where the customer actually pays less. It doesn't seem intuitive on the surface, but once you see the math, it's pretty cool. That's why people are doing this today. The next one, we don't want inferior supplies or gear. We've been burned already. And I can remember this in the early days of compatible toner, where people probably rightly felt that color just wasn't the same, that they had a lot of issues with color in the early days. Of course, with compatible or remanufactured supplies now, with good ones, like buying through Clover Imaging or Supplies Network or Liberty or some others, whoever you buy from, most of those supplies are pretty good today. But still, people might want an OEM supply. They may have a policy at their company. They want an OEM supply. The reason they're asking you about inferior supplies and gear is because typically under a cost per page program, that's how we delivered savings. So we would take an OEM scenario where the customer is paying full price for an OEM supply. We would show them how much money we can save them with a compatible or remanufactured supply. And buyer beware, there's obviously lots of providers out there that don't have the same scruples as I'm sure most of the people watching this do, and are buying supplies that really give the customer a bad experience, that blow up in their machines, etc. So the answer here is no. Don't mistake this flat rate savings scenario with how you've been sold savings under cost per page program to date. This isn't about getting you inferior equipment or inferior supplies, because under a flat rate program, you have to remember everything for my company is now a cost. And if I have to send people in to fix a device more often because the toner explodes, or if I give you a piece of equipment that breaks down more often, you're only paying me one flat rate every month. That's, although you'll be inconvenienced as the customer, which should never happen, it's going to affect my bottom line, like dramatically, because human labor cost to fix things is the most expensive part of any program. So I can guarantee you this: we're not going to give you substandard supplies. We're not going to give you substandard gear under this flat rate program because it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you because of reliability, and it doesn't help me because of reliability. I need those margins. I need to be able to make sure that that equipment and the supplies are running as efficiently and effectively as possible to deliver you the best flat rate experience, while at the same time not digging into my margins unnecessarily. So that is a question that does come up, but it's really been from their experience with working with other providers who have tried to convince them that they can save them, the typical 30% or more based on using inferior supplies or different things. So I would use this to turn that argument back on them, to say that the competitors that we're going up against who do not have a flat rate program, yes, I would be worried. Certainly with us, you don't need to be, because we're not going to let it happen. We just can't afford to. Here's a fun one, and this is going to come up quite a bit, especially in the early days in your territory for selling flat rate, because not everybody's selling it. This is the golden age of flat rate for managed print right now. It's when you're going to make money hand over fist because you are going to be the cheapest option in town. And as Ken likes to say, you're going to be the cheapest option in town because you're going to be the only option in town. And so for organizations that need 3 quotes, that they say it's their policy, that this is when I typically recommend saying, we'll satisfy that. So if you need to do a cost per page quote, 3 quotes, we'll submit that for you along with whoever those 2 other competitors are. All we ask in return is that we're allowed to offer a flat rate alternative proposal. So we'll give you what you need to satisfy your company policy, but then on top of that, we're going to provide you with an alternate proposal based on the flat rate model. So you can satisfy whatever their policies are internally, while at the same time making sure that they get that flat rate quote in front of them. Because what's going to happen is when they bring that to whoever the signing authority is, whoever the team is that's going to make the decision on that managed print deal, they're going to say, great, we got our satisfactorily, we've got our 3 responses or 4 responses. And what is this flat rate thing? And why is nobody else offering this? So looking at the savings that we can generate from our workflow, the increased security and everything else, a fixed budgetable bill every month, why aren't other people doing this, right? And the answer to that simply is because you are a more progressive and a better option for them as a partner. So make sure that you take full advantage of that. Give them what they want. Give them those make sure they can have their 3 quotes, but really shine with that alternative proposal. I used to do this all the time for RFPs. The number of RFPs that I would win by submitting an alternative proposal, although it was twice the work, it also led to generally 2 to 3 times the win rates. So make sure you make full use of those alternative proposals. It's not new to flat rate. You've probably done it yourself for other things. Just make sure that you take advantage of it. Looks like we have another one from Ken here. Oh, yeah. He loves this. I can't believe he's on a cruise ship near Cozumel and he's still commenting. So have the purple cow in your market. Yes, we love that. Seth Godin, we've probably helped you sell quite a few of your marketing books based on pushing this, but it really is such an awesome, example, that purple cow. Be that in your marketplace, right? So thanks, Ken, for reminding me about the purple cow, because we have talked about it in every episode, and I would have been remiss if we didn't do so today. All right. So our final objection, we've gone through 10. It's funny, it's episode 10, and we've got 10 objections that we've talked through today. This last one, you're going to start running into because we are pushing it hard. We have a website which has been built for end user customers to go to, and those that are certified either through our program or just through testing. You don't have to take training with us. We can actually just test and make sure that you're certified for the flat rate offering. We're driving end users to that location. So if they say that you're not flat rate certified, there really should be no excuse, right? Come to us. If you're out there selling a flat rate program already, make sure you work with us to get that certification. You can visit flatrate.world. You can see what we've got written up there for the flat rate certification, the customer education piece that we have there, and we'll help you to get certified. You don't have to train with us if you've already got a program. We can help you polish that program. We can help you just to get certified, whatever. Just make sure you get in touch with us. This objection should never happen, right? So they're going to start looking for those things just like they did with the CompTIA Managed Print Trustmark for years. Flat rate certified is another example of a credential that can give them some peace of mind because at least the provider is meeting some bare minimum standards for delivering on the model that they promised to deliver on. So get certified. All right. Want to do some more learning? I will be here. Ken will be here every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. You can set your watch to it. We will definitely be here, and we'll continue on our flat rate journey here on Flat Rate World. You can also get access to the 10-day challenge. And there's a couple ways you can do that. One, and I don't know why you do this, you can pay Ken and I $239 for access to the 10-day challenge. We'll happily give it to you. Or you could become a Managed Print Services Association member as a dealer. And if you do that, that's $200 a year. You will get the flat rate program, the 10-day challenge, for free. So that means you actually make $39. So if you want access to it, join the MPSA. Let them know that you want the discount on the 10-day challenge, and we'll make sure that that gets set up for you. So, or just pay Ken and I $239. It's entirely up to you. It's always good to have choice. Well, that's all I got for today. I want to thank everyone for tuning into another episode. Hopefully you found some of these objections less objectionable after the session today. I certainly encourage you to send me an email or to DM me on LinkedIn or on Facebook if you've got objections that you run into. I'd love to be able to help you through them as you're moving through the sales process. So until next time, enjoy the rest of your day. Happy selling, and we will see you next Wednesday.